Hi, everybody. Bryan Norcross here with a Wednesday afternoon update on what we've been talking about on Fox Weather this afternoon. And we have a change in the thinking about exactly what's going to happen with this tropical disturbance. I probably shouldn't say exactly because we still don't know. There's still a lot of uncertainty, but a big change in the European computer forecast model this afternoon has us more focused on a track into the Gulf of Mexico now because we have a general consensus of the system going that way as opposed to going somehow east of the Bahamas and on out to sea. So this changes things in a variety of different ways. And let me go over that with you now. So here's where we are on Wednesday afternoon. National Hurricane Center estimating the nominal center of this thing. There isn't a center because there's not a closed circulation, but just had to put an X somewhere, and that's their estimate of where the center of the energy is. The energy here is typified by this wave, and it's indeed called a tropical wave. And when you see this, think of a wave at the beach and think of the energy that's coming in the water. That's the idea. This energy is moving on through the atmosphere, and if the conditions are just right, that can coalesce into a tropical depression, tropical storm, and or eventually a hurricane. But this is where we are right now with some tropical downpours moving across Puerto Rico, the Virgin Islands, and the other nearby islands there as the system moves to the west. Here's the wider view, and we have some dry air still in here, but I don't think that's going to be a big factor in what's going on. It may inhibit development a little bit. The bigger factor is that this system is heading toward these very mountainous islands. So here's the National Hurricane Center's potential development area. And there you see where the Hurricane Center is saying that somewhere in that area, there's a 60% chance of at least a tropical depression forming in the next 7 days. Now, there are a lot of ways to misinterpret what this graphic is telling you. First of all, you see this line going from the X up to the graphic. The line does not mean that the forecast for this X or for this nominal center is forecast to go that way. It's just saying that there is no development expected in this time. In this next, certainly not in the next 2 days and probably in the next 3 days, development is not expected. So likely no development until about late Friday or Saturday would be the earliest time, probably on Saturday, especially if the storm actually tracks more down this way over these mountainous islands. Then it's going to end up over in this part of this development area somewhere. But again, this doesn't mean that it's going to develop over in here, because another possibility is that indeed it comes up in here, but then it stalls and it comes back, and maybe it loops, and maybe it comes over here, and then maybe it develops over in there. As long as that happens in the next 7 days, then the forecast is still correct. So don't think of this as some indication that the system is going to just move. Am I saying it's going to make all those loops? No, but there are more and more indications that it will get blocked in some fashion, and I'll show you what I mean by that here in just a second. So let's look at the forecast, and we're looking at two different aspects of the forecast here. One is, where is this nominal center going to go? Another is, where is this moisture going to go? And I guess a third actually is, well, what's the shape of this wind flow? Right now we have this wavy kind of shape, and if it were to develop a circulation, we would actually see that in this forecast model. So here we are today. Keep your eye on the upper left here for the days of the week and watch as we go forward in time. So here we go to tomorrow, and notice it's essentially a due westward trek now, and a lot of this moisture and this wave is going to interact with these mountains here, very, very tall mountains in the Dominican Republic and Haiti, and that just disrupts the flow. So that means that it can't really develop a circulation when a good part of the circulation or the flow is over top of those mountains. So there we are tomorrow afternoon. Now let's go forward in time, and we end up on this more southern track than we were talking about yesterday. Remember, yesterday we were talking about something more like this. something like that, up into the Bahamas. Now we're talking about the center of this energy farther south, maybe over Cuba. Now, could it end up here? Boy, when these things interact with the mountains, how they actually come out on the other side is very, very uncertain. And yes, it could come out up here, and this could be, up in the Bahamas. Could be, but the consensus is that it's farther south. That's the best we have to go on right now, but we're ready for a range of possibilities. And notice that the moisture is much more spread out now. We're getting some feeds in here from the south, so the whole area is moistening up and the dry air is more confined up here to the north. So here we are Friday afternoon, and now there's the whole Cuban landmass that has to be dealt with for the track of this storm. And watch as we go to Saturday, it kind of runs along Cuba. Not as a strong system, by the way. This is just more like gusty winds. Some certainly heavy rain is possible, where the rain goes over the same place all the time. And notice by Saturday it has moved in to South Florida. So forecast is for the increasing chance of tropical downpours, some with gusty winds moving into South Florida. But again, we're not talking about anything organized here. You see it's just a kind of a kink in the wind flow there. So just a disturbance still even into Saturday, and we're talking about mid-afternoon on Saturday at this point. So then, what can we say about moving forward? Well, first of all, the thing that is pulling it north is this dip in the jet stream here, and because it's taking the longer path to get on up to near Florida, that dip in the jet stream that is pulling it north is forecast by most of the computer forecast models to move out of the picture, and actually the flow there actually changes so that this high pressure that's pushing down from the north comes into play and ends up as some kind of a block here, and the system gets stuck under it. So what are the possibilities for it to happen? It continues moving to the north slowly, ends up in here somewhere. Now, it could end up over here a little bit, but then the various computer forecast models do all kinds of different things, including looping it around and stalling it and moving it back over here is a possibility. It's also a possibility it stalls there and eventually it ends up going that way, but it's all moving very slowly in doing this. So that has the potential of just dropping a lot of rain over some part of Florida, depending on how far north it gets before it gets blocked, because obviously when a system stalls, that it tends to drop rain all in the same place. Now, how about this idea of intensifying? Could it intensify in the Gulf of Mexico? It could. We don't have much indication. It's not that we don't have any, but it's not the consensus that it's going to intensify, but there is a possibility of a stronger system affecting the Tampa Bay area in some fashion. One of the computer forecast models kind of takes it up, brings it back here as a pretty strong storm, and now we get a pretty strong storm in there. So when a storm stalls, we have to be ready for every set of possibilities, including heavy rain from the stalling, also the possibility it's sitting over the very warm Gulf. Yes, it could intensify. Also, it drifts back this way and intensifies over in here, so it doesn't relieve the Carolinas of a potential threat. So we have this large zone all the way from, say, Mississippi to the Carolinas to a good part of Florida that could be affected by this stalling system. And this would be late on Saturday, more likely Sunday into Monday, maybe Tuesday. I can't even rule out Wednesday, and some of the models even longer than that before it finally gets on out of this general broad zone here, depending on exactly how the block sets up. I mean, as we saw with Hurricane Harvey, remember how that happened, and it kind of looped around in place because it was blocked from moving to the north, and there was no real steering to take it away. So I'm not saying this is going to be 50 or 60 inches of rain, but I'm saying we have the possibility of very heavy rain, flooding scenarios, hurricane or storm development scenarios. All kinds of scenarios are possible when we get into the weekend and early next week. So just to put that in your mind, not to make any kind of particular forecast at this point. And I want to remind you about Hurricane Elena. Anybody that was in the Tampa Bay area back in the mid 80s, this happened in 1985. Storm came up. They had a big evacuation called up in here. Then the storm stalled, went back over here. They had an evacuation over in the Tampa St. Pete area, and then it turned around and went back, and it ended up hitting in Mississippi. But damage was done along the coast through that whole stretch of the Gulf Coast because the system sat there. Now that was a hurricane. So if this just stays relatively weak, we're not going to have all of that scenario, but we can have some part of that scenario where we're just not sure what's going to happen on the coastal sections, should people leave or stay or whatever. Bottom line is, let's all plan to stay well informed when we get to the weekend. So the big questions we have are how much mountain interaction. Could, for example, it just be torn up in the mountains and never pull itself together? Yes, that's the other extreme of the possibilities. What's going to emerge after those mountains? Is it better developed because of the mountains, or is it just completely torn apart where it really has to kind of start over? And where would the circulation develop after it gets done with the mountains and the land and everything? All of those are very, very open questions. Anytime a system interacts with the mountains, it's sort of all bets are off until it's done doing that. And it's not going to be done doing that. Doesn't look like done with interacting with the mountains and land until about Saturday, maybe late Friday. We'll have some better idea. So that's where we stand here this afternoon. I don't know if it's any more certainty. The only somewhat more certainty, I think, is that it looks more likely to go into the Gulf of Mexico based on the consensus of what we know now. But of course, things can change anytime you have a weak and system interacting with a lot of high terrain. Okay, if you, by the way, are not aware, I'm on Fox Weather now, and we're available all over you. It's 24-hour free coverage. So I just want to put this up. So you can either scan that with your phone or just go to foxweather.tv, and it'll tell you how you can get it on TV. It's a free TV channel, and you get it on the Roku and Apple and all those kind of devices. You can also get it free and just watch the TV channel on your phone for free anytime. So go to foxweather.tv if you want to see what we're up to on Fox Weather at any time. All right, have a good evening, stay in touch, and we'll see how this thing turns out.